Hello and welcome back to the Freak Show. I am Sam Thurman. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Jacqueline. And today we're going to be talking about design, specifically interior design. The title of the episode is Why Design Matters, the Real Value Behind Beautiful Spaces. And the reason that we want to talk about this today is our design side of Beckon, mainly due to you, has been just taking off lately.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So wanted to take some time and pick your brain and basically just interview you in regard to your journey with design, some of your projections or predictions for what the future holds as far as style goes, and among some other things. So I'm basically just going to
Well, hopefully
interview you.
I'm prepared for
Yeah,
this.
and ask you some questions. I'm sure you are. You're always quick on your feet.
Yeah, well, we'll
So,
see.
all right. So you want to just jump in?
Yeah, let's jump
Okay.
in.
All right. So first question, can you walk us through your journey in design, how you got started, how your style has evolved, and how your work has grown over time?
Okay. So the first part of that question was how I got started.
Yeah, walk us through the journey. Of how you
And
got started.
I would say right off the bat, I fell into it because I love design. But I think there was definitely a divine order to things. I remember being a little girl sitting in my living room and drawing architectural designs just on a notepad for fun and thinking how cool that people can just create the kind of spaces that they want to live in. But at the time, I didn't have the vocabulary for architect or designer. I just thought homes are really cool and I'm really interested in how people live in their spaces and how you can customize spaces. Then as time evolved and I realized that I was a very creative human, I decided that music was my avenue and that I was going to pursue music. And one of the great impetuses behind wanting to pursue music was to have enough money to buy a house that I would love to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it and I think about some of my motivation back then, I realize I was on the path to designing all along. Now, caveat, I love music. I love writing music. I love being in the studio. It's like interior design, but with sound, right?
Yeah.
So they're two different mediums, but they scratch that same itch.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years and being in the music industry and playing shows late at night, and then when the pandemic hit, it just felt like I needed a change. I was burnt out. And again, my initial thought was I just fell into design, but I think there have been all of these stepping stones that God has placed along the way.
Mm-hmm.
One major one being when we bought our house in 2016, and I started designing it to be kind of like a Scandinavian, a little bit modern, a little bit boho kind of space, which at the time was unusual for where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to sell it and it sold in 5 days or less.
Yeah.
I think I understood not only is it important to design a space aesthetically, but also it pays to design a space aesthetically. And you started flipping homes way before I did and started renovations way before I did. And I think you and your former partnership learned the hard way that if you don't have design, things can sit for a very long period of time. And so as I learned that I did have a knack for design, I started asking you if I could just lend some of my creative eye to some of the projects that you guys were doing.
Right.
And I realized how much I love it. It's like a fish in water.
Yeah.
I could design in my sleep. I love it so much. And so as far as how I got started, I would say I think I've always been walking this path, just not realizing how obvious it was that this is where I was meant to be. And then the second part of your question, I'm just reading your notes here, is how your style has evolved. I think my style went from very Scandinavian, black and white 10 years ago to more of a mid-century modern, like bringing in some warmth, but still pretty angular,
Mm-hmm.
to after living in a mid-century modern space and appreciating it, realizing I want more warmth.
Yeah.
And I love the feeling of a home giving you a hug when you walk in.
Mm-hmm.
Like in fact, I told a client that this morning. She walked one of the homes that we did and she was like, I started crying when I walked in. It made me feel something.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's exactly what I want for every home that I do. I want you to love it or hate it. I don't want you to be in between.
Yeah.
But I started studying Spanish design and Mediterranean design. And I fell in love with the arches, with the textures, with the rustic wood elements. Not only are they beautiful to me, but they make me feel warmth and they make me feel grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we did Villa Secreta, I was like, Sam, do you trust me to just run with the design on this? And
Of
you were
course.
so open and you were so wonderful about it. But I took some pretty big creative risks in there. But I did it based on asking myself, how would I want to live in this home? How would I want to feel in here? And then I just leaned into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I went from a much more like modern aesthetic, which I still appreciate. I appreciate all design styles, but I've now leaned much more into like, how do I want to interact with a space?
Yeah.
How do I envision someone coming in here and how are they going to feel when they feel this? And so I like the more rounded aspects of design.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very evident with some of the projects that we have done. You know, we talk about it, or we talked in that process of like, look, we're not casting a wide net here.
No.
We're not doing what is extremely popular that everybody else is doing. The equivalent of the 2015 to 2019 agreeable gray, you know, that everybody, all the investors and flippers were doing. But what we agreed to is to take some chances and say, hey, we're not looking, like I said, to cast a wide net. We want to appeal to very specific buyers with a very specific style, which means not everybody's going to love it,
Yeah.
but the people that do are going to love it.
Mhm.
And that's what's happened.
I want an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, as when I put on my real estate investor cap, of course, profit is super important. But when I go into my heart of hearts, I don't want to do any projects that I'm not excited about, that I'm not challenged by, that I am not like 100% into.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that frequency going in, if you're not into it, it shows.
Yeah.
And so I think at this point, we really only agree to renovating homes and client projects that we really, really want to do.
Yeah.
Because it's exciting to us and we know that we can transform it into something beautiful.
Yeah. And just because something has style or a specific style, like yours in particular, it doesn't mean it needs to be more expensive. It can feel more expensive.
Yeah.
But you have the knack for being able to identify where to spend the money and where not to spend the money that's going to create a ton of value and make that space a space that we love, and then ultimately the folks that are buying the house are going to love. So I think a lot of times there can be this misconception that in order to have something designed really nicely, you're going to have to spend a lot more money, when that's not necessarily the case. You just have to be smart about where you spend the money.
Yeah. I think, I talked to somebody this morning who is very budget conscious and I think a little nervous to hire an interior designer. And I am not pushy with anybody ever because I just don't believe in that. But what I will say is having an interior designer and somebody who knows how to manage, especially major renovation projects, which is basically all we do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've done any like tiny projects, and I'm willing to do tiny projects, but we've done like pretty major gut job renovations. If you don't have an interior designer and you don't have a design eye and you don't have somebody managing that project, it's easy to double your budget and then double the timeline.
Yeah.
So I think if you are willing, it is worth having somebody who has experience in this arena because it can save you a lot of time and money and headache.
Well, that's what makes you so effective because, and look, I personally don't know a ton about interior design as an industry, but what I feel like makes you so special is you have a fantastic design eye. You also understand the construction process of the different phases of when this happens, when this needs to be ordered, when this needs to be in place, so that if you have a design client, which we should take a step back and talk about that, go back to how has this progressed for you. But when you have a design client, you also serve as a project manager in many cases.
Yeah.
So you're not just going in and saying, we want to put these types of countertops in or this type of flooring, this type of tile. You're actually doing all of that, but also overseeing the progress of the project with the contractor.
And I think that's just kind of a personal thing that I decided to take on because I'm such a stickler for quality and finish work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you have a client who wants to redo their entire home, but then you're not part of the process of like watching everything come to fruition, that was just an aspect of the control of the project I was not willing to give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, to go back to that initial question of how this has progressed for you, design, you really were just focused on doing design for our projects. It wasn't like you were
100%.
out seeking clients. But in the process of us doing projects and selling projects, you started to get people that were walking our houses that were listed for sale, and they started reaching out to you to do design work for them. So you weren't necessarily seeking them, they've been coming to you. And in that process, because you do understand how projects work and flow, you're able to apply everything that we've kind of learned together from a
Through
project
trial and
management
error.
standpoint
Yeah.
and apply that to your clients' projects. And I think that is extremely valuable because like you said, if let's say if someone is, they're just buying their personal home and they've never gone through a renovation, it's most likely, and you have to understand, you have to manage contractors. I have made this mistake so many times over where I didn't effectively manage a contractor, and things will be done not to a standard, or they'll be done out of order or not exactly how you want it to, and then you have to go back and redo it.
Yeah. And it delays
But
things.
with you, you're very hands-on, your boots on the ground, you're overseeing everything. And it's also valuable for the contractor because in order for them to progress, they need to have the materials on
And
time and
quick
when they need to
feedback.
have them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and quick feedback. So I say all that to say it's such a value add for your clients that not only are you providing fantastic design, you're also managing the project. And I would say, even though they're paying you to do the design and the project management, that you ultimately save them a lot of money in the long run and time
I have. Yeah.
and headache that they don't even
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I definitely have.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to brag. I just mean that as like a
Well, it's
black
just a
and white
fact.
look at the
Yeah.
spreadsheet facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you've never overseen a remodel of your home, then, you shouldn't expect to be an expert at it.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
anyway, okay. So I think the next question, we've kind of touched on that a bit, but why is design important? And what is the value of design? Both, I would say, personally as well as financially.
Mm-hmm. So let's bring it back to frequency. Everything has a frequency. Everything in your space has a frequency. If you look at it through a microscope, it's got atoms moving in it. Things aren't totally solid, right? And I think of pretty much everything we do through the lens of frequency. So, why is design important? Because your space affects you and you affect your space. Living in, say, let me turn this question around to you. How do you feel living in this house versus living in our house in Athens, Georgia?
Well, it kind of feels like we're living on a different level, I would say. I loved our home in Athens, but it
And I
was,
did too.
yeah, but it was kind of I don't want to say mediocre because it was a great house, but it wasn't super special. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you did a great job with what we had
And a
and
very
and
limited
and the budget
budget.
that we had, yeah, which was
Like no
basically
budget.
yeah, not to go get off track, but didn't you ask me? You asked me for like a design budget or something like that when we first moved into the house, and I was like $1,200 or
That was
something
when we
like that
moved into our Boise house. I asked for a design budget. We had just
to
gotten
buy all our
married.
furniture and everything.
Yeah, we had just gotten married. We didn't have dishes. We like barely had pots and pans. We had no artwork, no furniture, nothing. And I was like, okay, what's our design budget? And you said, do you think you can keep it under $1,000?
Yeah, yeah. No furniture, no dishes, no anything.
so, so,
You
and
made it work though.
I did. I
Yeah.
did make it work and we figured it out. And I think we've grown from there. But
Yeah.
that house, so our Athens house versus now, like,
Yeah.
how do you feel?
This house now just feels so much more aligned with who we are, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, and it's more of a reflection of
Mm-hmm.
who we are. Um, and that's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very.
yeah, and it also
We designed this from every inch of it.
yeah, and it's also kind of otherworldly from a standpoint of it just feels, you know, we're in Scottsdale, Arizona, which you don't necessarily think of as a super exotic place, but there are aspects of our home that make you feel it's expansive, I think, because
Yeah.
it takes in different elements from
Different
around the
parts of the
world.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I ask you that to prove my point that our spaces affect us and we affect our spaces. I, for one, every single morning sit in my bedroom and have coffee and read and have a quiet time next to our son. And I look out of our bedroom and I see our library and this cool Moroccan door, this amazing light in our library going into our arched entryway with this awesome linen light. And every single morning, I'm inspired by what I see. Every single morning, I'm pinching myself, going, I get to live here.
Mm-hmm.
This is amazing. I just feel so blessed. And then I walk into our kitchen and I'm like, I feel like I can chef it up in here. This is like the most incredible, gorgeous kitchen. And that's not to say you have to import stuff from Morocco or you have to have an incredible, big, gorgeous kitchen. It is to say how we feel in our spaces affects how we act in our lives.
So I would say it like this. You put inspiration into the design of the home,
Yeah.
and by doing that, the home inspires
Oh,
you.
I love that.
Yeah, I thought
Yes.
that was pretty good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the case. So for me, when it comes to design, that is the most important element, that you feel aligned with your space, that when you wake up in the morning and you're having that first sip of coffee, you're like having that pinch me moment of, I get to live here. This is my life. This is incredible. So that's the most important thing. And then when you talk about monetary value or finances, having a beautiful space adds a lot of equity to your home. And then if you were to go sell it, gives you an advantage over most other homes on the market,
Yeah.
which are outdated and a lot of the time not taken care of all that well.
Yeah. One example I would give is when we sell a home and maybe we are trying to sell at the top of the value that that neighborhood normally commands from like a comp standpoint.
Yeah.
You always want to try to have the appraisal take place while the home is staged, because the staging, the
Makes a huge
furniture,
difference.
what are all the knickknacks called?
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Staging elements.
They add value just from a overall feeling standpoint. So 9 times out of 10, if a home is staged well, it's probably going to appraise higher than if it's not staged. And part of that is everyone has an imagination, but oftentimes people can't imagine what a
They
space
have a
can
hard time
be, yeah,
visualizing. Yeah.
without it. So, there are so many homes where you could just go in and change hardware. You could change lighting fixtures. You could change whatever it is,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden,
Paint colors.
you increase the value of that home by $100,000 by making $5,000 worth of changes and updates.
Yeah, it's
So,
pretty incredible. It really
yeah.
is. But, how your home makes you feel, I cannot overstate that enough. Or, yeah, is that the right term? I
Yeah.
can't understate that enough or overstate that. I can't overstate that enough because we spend, last time I checked, something like 60% of our time in our homes. And so we want that to feel aligned. We want that to feel like a high frequency. So we're bathing in that high frequency daily.
Yeah. Okay. So what style trends do you think are going to gain momentum right now? And are there any that you specifically love?
I can tell you what I'm excited about. I would say I have a good pulse on what's going on in the design world simply because I'm obsessed with it. But great design to me doesn't necessarily follow trends. It might bring in some trendy elements, but great design to me reflects the people who are going to live there. Or like for us, when we're renovating a home, the imaginary family that's going to live there, which I always put us in those shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So I always imagine the human experience. How's somebody going to feel in the space? So as far as trends go, it's hard for me to predict.
Or maybe not trends, but because we're not necessarily following trends. What are
and I pay attention to the trends. I just don't necessarily love them.
What are some different elements that you really enjoy?
I'll tell you what I'm really excited about is earthy elements and bringing the outside in. So as my design style has evolved, I've realized I love being outside. And so a lot of the new designs that I am doing, and I meet with a new client tomorrow at her house, we're going to do a full gut job renovation on her interior. And we are bringing in so many earthy elements. So think handmade tile, think limestone, think live edge wood and lots of wood shelving throughout that is raw and real and untouched and unlacquered. Mm-hmm. And it gives you this sense of groundedness and a feeling of peace. Like when you're in nature, when you're immersed in nature, there's nothing like that feeling of peace. It's like you're in God's realm, right? Mm-hmm. And so I love bringing those same colors, that same color palette that you see from the outside, and then a lot of those natural elements inside, kind of as untouched as possible. So for instance, when I'm saying limestone, I'm thinking hammered limestone, which has a lot of texture and it's a little bit imperfect, but it's like food. Instead of anything being processed or super honed or super perfected or super angular, mm-hmm. it still has those natural shapes.
Yeah.
And I love bringing that into an interior because it makes you feel more at one with the nature around you.
Yeah. It's kind of a shift for a number of years now, modern
super
design,
modern.
And especially here has been so popular. Mm-hmm. And it is cool. I think, we used to really like modern design as well.
I appreciate it.
But I think just kind of the day and age that we live in, there is a trend, I'll say it, back to what's real. Mm-hmm. And the cold, straight lines of a modern design, while it's still nice, it doesn't give you the same feel.
It's not how I want to live. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's not how I want to live. I want to feel more at one with nature. I want to feel cozier. I want less angular lines and more organic feeling materials.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm most excited about, is bringing in those kinds of elements, and with Spanish and Mediterranean interiors, and also with wabi sabi, which, like, if I'm majoring in college, my major is Spanish style and Mediterranean, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm minoring, it's some of those wabi sabi imperfect elements.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. That's what I feel like is my wheelhouse. And I can design anything else, but those are my true loves, like you.
Yeah. So obviously you have the design aspects that you love personally,
Yeah.
but when you're working with a client, what's your process of getting to the style that they're going to love? Obviously, they're approaching you in many cases because they already love your style, but then how do you turn around and personalize it to them?
Yeah, it's so important that each of my designs are bespoke to the client receiving them. I want my designs to be bespoke to the people living in them. So I feel like all the self-help books that I've read over the years, which you can attest to, we've got shelves of them in here,
Mm-hmm.
really pay off, because my as much as you can as a human, I think it's really important for me as a designer to completely remove my ego from the project.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about me getting my designs in there. It's about me making sure that the client's home or our project reflects the people that are going to live in it.
Yeah.
And so there's some psychology that goes into it, because also sometimes people don't know what they want.
Right.
So I think asking lots of questions, I ask a lot of questions like, how do you want to feel in this space? What are some of your inspiration photos? What kind of color palettes do you like? What excites you?
Mm-hmm.
And then getting to know a little bit about their personal history too, because I think, again, psychology wise, if you're dealing with a client that, let's say, has been like recently divorced or something, they might be tender around some of those edges. And so I like to know those things so I can accommodate. And also, when I have to approach them with something, I have that in mind, knowing they've experienced X, Y, and Z. And I want to make sure I'm sensitive to that and understand where they're coming from. So we really, really, really can drill down to the design that they actually want, not something that they're going to settle for, not something that I present. And because I'm the designer, they go, oh, well, I just trust you and we'll go with it.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be something that I want our relationship to be something that they feel like they can bring anything to me and say anything to me respectfully, because that's going to create a better end result.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with songwriting, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I have written songs with other people, I go, it's not that my lyric is the most important. The song is the most important. So if we're collaborating, it doesn't matter who puts in what. Let's just make sure that it's the best that it can be, and that the lyrics that we choose make the most sense and are the best for the song.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with interior design for me.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very collaborative process, unless it's just me and you, and then we just have a ball going back and forth, right?
That's right. That is right. Okay, so we've already kind of touched on the last couple questions. One thing that I want to ask you is, from your perspective, what is key to making a project successful, encompassing the design, working with the client, and working with the contractor to make sure everything happens? What are some tips on making that process
Like for other
flow?
designers, or for people who are interested in renovating their homes?
Both, but I would just say speak as from your perspective. When you have a design project and you're looking at it, you say, I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to make sure this project goes smoothly and ultimately the client gets what they want.
Well, I'm nothing without the people that surround me, right? I can make a cool design, but I can't go in and physically remodel somebody's kitchen by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a good understanding of who you are working with and who you are trusting and who you're aligning yourself with, and then also with clients, like, having a good understanding of what they expect so that you know that you can meet that expectation. And I am so honest with everything. So if somebody doesn't like that, then I know it's not a good fit. And if a contractor or a tradesman can't handle feedback, like we had a couple of those at Villa Secreta, I know that that's not somebody we want to work with again, because we want the end product to be the best it can be. It's not about ego.
Yeah.
So I think making sure that you surround yourself with really good people. I think dialing in the design and having a very clear picture of what you're going to do to a room, not designing like as a project goes, but I like to design a whole project before we even lift a hammer and do anything. And it doesn't mean that things can't deviate, things can't change, colors can't change. In one of my recent projects, we picked out totally different countertops than I anticipated, but they're going to be even better. It's going to be awesome. So we can shift and flow, but having that template set out creates organization. It also creates a very accurate budget. If you have an idea of how much a material costs because you've already picked it out for that space, I can then go to the client who chose a different marble and say, hey, we allotted this much money and the marble that you chose is X amount more. Are you comfortable spending that? And here's where you are in your budget because of that. I love being able to have that kind of structure because it allows me to have a good handle on the numbers. And it also, I keep a spreadsheet for my clients, allows them to understand this is how much this costs. This is how much this costs. This is your budget. This is what you have left. This is what you still owe. Having those numbers available throughout the entire project, I think gives everybody a peace of mind. And then if you want to deviate and buy more expensive mirrors or whatever, you can go to the budget and say, I have it, or I don't, or I'm willing to spend more for this.
Yeah. So if I were to summarize that, I would say starting with the end in mind, putting the vision
Yes.
out there, aligning with the client, with the contractor on the vision of the design, maintaining that communication, then expectations. Client, this is what you should expect. This is what the budget is. Contractor, tradesman, this is what we expect of you and how you should expect the communication to go.
Yeah,
And
there's a
this
lot
is
of
the
expectation
timeline.
parties.
Yeah.
And a lot of boundaries too.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I'm nice and I want to interact with you, but I also expect excellence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then actively managing that,
Yeah.
the progress.
And you just, you know, in my position, it's a lot of follow up with people. You know, you can, tradesmen have a lot going on. They have a lot of clients. And so I may have to follow up with somebody 5 times. And it's not that they're not a good worker or that they're not organized sometimes. It's just they have so much going on and it is what it is. So when I take on the project management aspect of things, there are just a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I keep a detailed list of what needs to be done and who I need to follow up with.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. So to wrap up here, we, this Beckon Design is vertically integrated with the rest of our business. It kind of comes naturally as a natural progression of what we've done in the past. But to wrap up here, where do you see this going? Or how would you like
How do I
the
want it to go?
Beckon design to progress?
Yeah. Well, I would love to make a name for ourselves for creating these really bespoke homes for people. And I've said this for years now. I want Beckon to be a company that people look to as a beacon for design, for high frequency lifestyle, for high frequency products. And so the easiest way to describe it would be like, I want to create a Chip and Joanna Gaines Magnolia sort of situation, but with our style and with our heavy focus on mindset and healing thoughts and how much that influences everything else we do. down to the products we put on our skin and the products we bring into our home.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
So I have very big
I already
aspirations.
knew the answer to the question. I just wanted you to share it with
big
everyone
aspirations
who's listening. So anything else you want to add, or should we end with a question?
No, yes. I would say that if you're listening to this and you want to remodel your space, whether you're in the Scottsdale area or Timbuktu, know that it's possible. Know that what you want is possible and believe it. And if you have any questions, even if you don't want to hire me as a designer, if you just have design questions, reach out to me. I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I want to be somebody who is always willing to share and support and put good out into the world. And I know the value of what it feels like to live in a space that you love. And I think everybody deserves that, no matter your budget, whether you have $0 or millions of dollars to spend. I think there are really cool, creative ways to make your space feel like you. So if you ever have a question, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at hello@beckonliving.com. You can reach out to me on social media at Jacqueline Steele or at Beckonliving. And I'm happy to voice note you or send you photos or whatever. We want to create a better world. We want to leave a better world than the way that we came into it. And so I want to be spreading, like, if I'm thinking about this metaphorically, I want to be planting wildflowers, like, wherever I go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Sounds
I guess
like you.
I think we need to ask the audience a question now. Do you have it?
Yeah, I have it. And going back to what we said earlier, I would say, how can you pour inspiration into your space so that it then inspires you?
Oh, I love that.
I love it too.
Okay. Live on purpose, live on frequency. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for listening to The Freak Show with Sam Thurmond and me, Jacqueline Steele Thurmond. We would love to connect with you via our website, beckonliving.com, and on social media.
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Beckon Living, and you can join our email list to receive uplifting messages, podcast and business updates, and discounts on high-frequency products just for our freaky community.
Cheers to high frequency living.